A young man from Virginia fought for America's independence and built a life on honor and loyalty. But years later, that same loyalty would bring him to the edge of history, standing silently by as two of the most powerful men in the nation faced off in an illegal duel. One man would die, one would be disgraced, and the second knew too much. But first, if you're a fan of profound, historic, and timeless stories told in captivating detail, well, that's what we do here. Twice a week, we bring you the stories that shaped our world, and today's tale is one of loyalty, tragedy, and a duel that changed history. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, let's get started. Nathaniel Pendleton grew up in the rolling hills of Virginia, surrounded by sprawling fields and stately homes. Born in 1756, he came from a family of deep colonial roots. His father was a lawyer, and his uncles were judges and ministers, men of faith, law, and loyalty, all to the British crown. For the Pendletons, the stability offered by the monarchy wasn't just tradition, it was protection. But the colonies were restless. By the time Nathaniel was a boy, the air in Virginia crackled with talk of rebellion. Farmers grumbled about unfair taxes. Merchants whispered about British overreach. And then there were men like Patrick Henry, whose fiery speeches turned whispers into a roar. Henry spoke of liberty as though it were worth everything, worth risking your family, your fortune, even your life. Nathaniel was a boy during those years, but he heard the whispers. His elders debated rebellion cautiously, their voices low, as they weighed loyalty to the king against the growing dream of independence. Nathaniel, however, saw the chance to be part of something larger than himself. And when war broke out, he didn't hesitate. By the time he was 20, Nathaniel joined the Continental Army. The Revolution changed Nathaniel Pendleton forever. He served as an aide to General Nathanael Greene, one of George Washington's most trusted commanders. It was a crash course in war and in life. The Southern campaigns were brutal. Disease and starvation were constant enemies. Battles with British forces were chaotic and merciless. Pendleton watched friends fall in the fields and heard the cries of wounded soldiers in the night. The stench of gunpowder clung to his uniform. The screams of men, some barely older than boys, haunted his dreams. But he endured. General Greene saw something special in him, a sharp mind, an unflinching sense of duty, and a commitment to principle. Pendleton became Greene's right hand, trusted with delicate missions. Greene often spoke to him about the fragility of victory. Muskets and cannons, Greene said, might win battles, but discipline and honor would win the war. These lessons stayed with Pendleton for the rest of his life. When the war ended, Pendleton returned to civilian life, a changed man. He became a judge in Georgia, helping to build the state's new legal system. It was an unruly time, filled with disputes over land and property, and Pendleton earned a reputation for fairness and level-headedness. But by the 1790s, the quiet life didn't suit him. He moved to New York, where opportunities seemed boundless and where his old friend Alexander Hamilton lived. New York in those days was a hotbed of political debate and rapid change, perfect for a man like Pendleton. It wasn't long before he and Hamilton became political allies. Both veterans of the Revolution, they shared a vision for America's future, a strong central government to bring stability to the young nation. Hamilton, of course, was a force of nature. His intellect and ambition drove the Federalist cause, and Pendleton admired him deeply, not just for his brilliance, but for his unwavering commitment to principle. Hamilton, in turn, saw Pendleton as a man of honor, loyal, and steadfast. But their friendship also brought Pendleton into the orbit of Hamilton's greatest rival, Aaron Burr. If Hamilton was a man of fiery ideals, Burr was a man of shifting ambitions. Where Hamilton was direct, Burr was elusive. Where Hamilton held firm to his beliefs, Burr adapted to whatever suited his ambitions. For years, their rivalry simmered. By 1804, it boiled over. Burr was no ordinary political enemy. He had once been one of the most powerful men in the nation, serving as Thomas Jefferson's vice president. But as time went on, his career entered a freefall. His relationship with Jefferson had soured beyond repair. Jefferson, suspicious of Burr's motives and political maneuvering, shut him out of influence within his administration. Desperate to revive his career, Burr set his sights on becoming governor of New York. It was a risky gamble, his last shot at reclaiming his reputation. But Hamilton, with his sharp pen and sharper tongue, campaigned fiercely against him, delivering scathing critiques that destroyed Burr's chances. Burr was humiliated and furious. He demanded satisfaction, a duel. Pendleton, ever loyal to Hamilton, agreed to serve as his second. The role of a second wasn't ceremonial, it was critical. Seconds negotiated the terms, prepared the weapons, and ensured that the rules of honor were followed. But Pendleton knew something that Burr did not. Hamilton had confided in him and only him, a decision that weighed heavier than the pistol Pendleton would hand him. Alexander Hamilton despised dueling. Just 3 years earlier, his son Philip had been killed in a duel. The grief was still fresh, and Hamilton swore he would never take a life in such a way. For Hamilton, this duel wasn't about vengeance, it was about preserving his honor. He told Pendleton that he planned to fire into the air, a gesture that would fulfill the code of honor while sparing both men's lives. Pendleton tried to dissuade him. He warned Hamilton that Burr might not play by the same rules. But Hamilton was resolute. The morning of July 11, 1804 arrived with a thick mist rolling over Weehawken, New Jersey, curling around the trees and muting the world in an eerie hush. The only sounds were the distant lapping of the Hudson River and the occasional chirp of birds nestled in the trees, unaware of the deadly affair about to unfold. Pendleton stood tensely, watching as Hamilton and Burr took their positions. He could feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. A second's job was to stay calm, but his heart pounded in his chest. Hamilton raised his pistol first and fired into the sky. Pendleton held his breath. Burr, unwavering, lifted his own pistol, his eyes cold and steady. He took aim and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, echoing across the water. Hamilton staggered, collapsing to the ground, his face twisted in pain, and for a moment the world stood still. Pendleton rushed to his side, his hands trembling as he tried to stop the bleeding. The duel was over. Alexander Hamilton's death sent shockwaves through the nation. His funeral was a grand, sorrowful affair. Thousands attended, weeping as he was laid to rest. Pendleton stood among them, feeling the weight of their stares. Did they blame him? Did they think he could have stopped this? Meanwhile, Aaron Burr fled. He was indicted for murder but never tried. His political career lay in ruins. He drifted out west, scheming for power before fleeing to Europe. Years later, he returned to New York, old and forgotten. He died in 1836, outliving Pendleton by over a decade, alone, forgotten, and disgraced. Throughout the remainder of his life, Pendleton was haunted by that morning. He often returned to Weehawken, standing on the same ground where history had shifted. The birds had long since returned, their songs as cheerful as they'd been that morning before the fatal shots were fired. But Pendleton knew something changed forever. Perhaps he whispered a silent prayer, or perhaps he said nothing at all. Because sometimes the greatest acts of loyalty are the secrets we keep.
New Heath Story episodes drop twice a week only on the Jim Heath channel. If you'd like to help keep Heath Story going, consider supporting us on Patreon.